Today, first up is someone who we are very fond of. As I said, on the OneAcademy core team, no other than Mr. Alvin Morton, who is an avid OneAcademite. Avid. He does a lot of research. He hosts and also presents on our daily Lunch and Learn OneAcademy Zoom calls. And he is someone who really is liked by everyone in the community because he brings a certain flair to the presentation that he does. All right, so he would just do just about a 15-minute presentation with this new format that we are having, of course, featuring the OneAcademy, and we would like to get more people involved in the OneAcademy. It's a fantastic product. It is the heart, as Dr. Ruja said, of this fantastic company, and there's a reason why. In my estimation, the OneAcademy and the material from the OneAcademy actually gives the blueprint of how this company rolls out their vision. And if you notice, the people who are not in a OneAcademy, it's easy for them to lose their identity when it comes to the vision of the company. But once you understand exactly what the information is, you now take that and really proceed with this fantastic purpose that we have to affect one life at a time. So first up, as I said, is Mr. Alvin Morton, coming out of Trinidad, who is also someone that basically is very professional in everything that he does. He's an engineer by nature. And again, he has been in the OneAcademy and One Life for the past 3 years and has added so much value to the Caribbean team. So I introduce to you Mr. Alvin Morton, coming out of Trinidad and Tobago. Mr. Morton, are you there, sir? You could unmute your mic. All right, you're muted.
Yes, I am. Thank you very much for that kind introduction, Mr. Co-captain and host. A pleasant good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of us, 250 plus present today. Thank you very much for the opportunity to address you with respect to the OneAcademy. Folks, this has been indeed the heart of my journey for the last 3 years, because I became an IMA in April of 2017. And permit me to invent a new word, perspectivize. The OneAcademy has enabled me to literally add perspective to much of the things that I've studied. There are things that I've studied, passed exams and didn't understand, and there are things that I've understood without the need for an exam to be passed. And perhaps each one of us in our own way can relate to those two scenarios. All right. Permit me to share my screen because I think that will add context to how the OneAcademy has affected me and how it continues to affect me. Okay, I'm being challenged to share my screen, host disabled participant screen sharing. Okay, I'm still unable to share my screen, Ivan. I'm not sure why.
Okay, we try to promote you to co-host. I was having a little difficulty in doing that myself.
I see. Okay, in the meantime, what I will be sharing is an adaptation of a presentation I did for the Lunch and Learn OneAcademy session about 2 to 3 weeks ago. It's just about 8 slides. There is a video of which only 2 or 3 minutes I would share in the interest of time. It is now 9:10 or thereabouts.
Elvin, sorry to interrupt, Elvin. You are set as a co-host. You are able to share your screen now.
Okay,
Ivan,
great.
you can set the next speaker as a co-host so that they can share their PowerPoint, because I do not know who is your speaker tonight.
Okay, thanks.
Elvin, you can do so now. Thanks. Thanks.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And in the words of Chris Cuomo of Cuomo Prime Time, let's get after it. We're going to talk a bit today about quantitative easing. And we are going to see a lot of this in the current climate that we are in, COVID-19, lockdown, and so on. And I opened the presentation that I did a few weeks ago with this quote from John Kenneth Galbraith. The study of money above all other fields in economics is one in which complexity is used to disguise truth or to evade truth, not to reveal it. The process by which banks create money is so simple, the mind is repelled. With something so important, a deeper mystery seems only decent. And if I may, the OneAcademy has helped me understand this statement in so many ways and continues so to do. For at the end of it all, isn't this issue of money a big concern to each and every one of us? And how much more so is it of concern in the current circumstances of COVID-19, and indeed post-COVID-19? I take the opportunity, nevertheless, also to share a disclaimer in that the information contained herein is not designed to be a source of financial information, nor construed as such. We all know that One Life is not an investment company. I'm aware that I'm preaching to the choir here, or to the converted. But as a matter of practice, I like to share this nevertheless. In spite of that, though, the information that is shared, I believe, and certainly as I continue to engage this process, this information adds additional content, context, and construct to any due diligence process, which we must all undertake. Some definitions. I like to make reference to investopedia.com and would advise any one of us to avail ourselves of this website. There are others, but I like the simplicity and the detail with which this particular site explains some of these concepts. Quantitative easing is a form of extraordinary monetary policy used by central banks to quickly increase the domestic money supply. So we are going to see QE obviously being employed again. QE usually involves the central bank purchasing longer-term government bonds as well as other types of assets, such as MBS, mortgage-backed securities. Sounds familiar? The Federal Reserve announced a $700+ billion QE program on March 15th, 2020 to backstop the US economy. And I'm pretty sure that many other central banks are going to be using a similar model. This follows an earlier pledge by the Fed to fund up to $1.5 trillion to the overnight bank repo market. And perhaps in another session, we can discuss how much is a trillion. It is 67.9 miles high or 109 kilometers high of $1,000 bills stacked one on top of the other. It would take you out of the stratosphere of the planet. And we're talking about 1.5, and in some cases, much more than that. Because monetary policy is mentioned, I think it's important to at least give a sense of what that is and compare it against fiscal policy. So while monetary policy involves the management of the supply and interest rates by the central bank, and that can be used to provide a stimulus to a faltering economy, either to speed it up or to slow it down, depending on the particular policy objectives that are being pursued. Fiscal policy, on the other hand, deals with the way central government earns money through taxation and how it spends it. So to stimulate or to give a stimulus to, and we're going to be hearing a lot about stimuli throughout the world, a government will cut tax rates while increasing its own spending. To cool down an overheating economy, it will do the reverse. We believe at the OneAcademy that understanding is crucial, and therefore we take the time to examine these things, even if they are not specifically addressed through the OneAcademy manuals themselves. Permit me to share 2 minutes of this video by Chris Martinson, PhD, on QE Explained.
Welcome to this chapter on quantitative easing, or QE. Here in 2014, the developed world is currently in the middle of the largest monetary experiment in all of history, one that spans the entire globe. This is very important because when you strip away a lot of economic gobbledygook, money is really a social contract. We agree that it has value, but otherwise, it's backed by nothing more substantial than that, our mutual agreement. Given this context, we should view money printing as really more of a social experiment than a sophisticated monetary practice. And so we're going to study it here as such because when a nation's money system breaks down, society as a whole is impacted. Commerce is heavily disrupted, shelves are cleared, careers are ruined, and the future is badly diminished. So what exactly is quantitative easing, or QE? Well, it's money printing. Simple as that. However, today we don't actually print all that much physical cash. So when I say money being printed, don't think of big stacks of $100 bills. Think instead of digital ones and zeros, mainly a lot of zeros, showing up on electronic ledgers. We discussed QE briefly in the chapter on the Fed, but here we'll go into it in slightly more detail. Again, the way the Fed creates money is simply by creating an accounting entry that says the money exists. Imagine if one day you woke up, checked your bank account, and found $1 billion in it. Looking into it, you discovered the Fed had deposited that money there last night. This money would be very real to you and would completely change your financial circumstances. You could spend it just the same as if you had earned it over 66,313 years, working at the current minimum wage of $7.25 per hour and saving every dime. But where did the Fed get that $1 billion? What did it do to earn that much money? This quote tells the tale. And let me highlight that last line, because that's the important one here. When the Federal Reserve writes a check, it is creating money. Now, in our example, the Fed simply created money when it sent it to you. Tap, 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 a few keys were clicked on a keyboard, and voila, your $1 billion was created and deposited in your account. At the end of 2013, this process was being used to the tune of $85 billion per month. Only that money was not going into your account, not unless you were a very large financial institution. The Fed creates that money when it buys either treasury bonds or mortgage-backed securities, which is what MBS stands for. And the mechanism is really easy to explain. Say the Fed wants to buy $40 billion of treasury bonds. Well, first it will announce to the market, which actually means the big banks who play in this game, that it wants to buy $40 billion of treasury bonds and the price range it's willing to pay for them. A variety of banks will then offer up the specific bonds at specific prices, and the Fed chooses which among them to actually buy and then buys them. These bonds are now assets on the Fed's books, so if we were to take a look at the Fed balance sheet, we should see it growing by leaps and bounds over the last few years. Indeed, that's exactly what we see. The Fed's balance sheet is now nearly $4 trillion in size, and every single one of the dollars represented by that $4 trillion number was literally printed or mouse-clicked into existence out of thin air.
And I'm going to stop at this stage because, indeed, as John Kenneth Galbraith says, when we understand that $4 trillion is created out of thin air, I don't know about you, but I certainly experience a repulsion in my own mind. Our OneAcademy does have quite a few things to say, though. Level 1, pages 7 and 8, we see the term bailout being mentioned and specific examples being given, such as Greece accepting money from the troika of the International Monetary Fund, the European Central Bank, and the European Union. Page 7 also makes reference to printing presses of the US Federal Reserve and the ECB seeming to be running without a break. We talked about on that page giving the appearance for stable demand of government bonds. And although the video I showed makes reference to 2014, how very similar are the things described to what we are seeing now? And that video is actually 13 or 14 minutes long, and it goes into how stocks, bonds, and real estate have been propped up by this creation of money out of thin air. And page 8 talks about the new century has already featured 2 crises: the bust of the dot-com bubble in 2001, the Great Recession, and of course the answer of the Fed, simply to print more money and lower the interest rate. Some key takeaways from the video: money is a social contract. This is something I've heard King James or Captain say, that money is anything we agree on. QE is simply money, or I like to say more correctly, currency printing. As articulated in the video, it is now digital ones and zeros simply being added to an electronic ledger. And I have a question. Is this why cryptos were banned first until something called a CBDC, central bank digital currency, could be introduced? I'd like to wrap up at this point because I'm just about a minute or so over my time allotted. And a call to action. Google the terms. There's a lot of information on Google. Google things like QE, quantitative easing, monetary policy, fiscal policy. I also ask that we get to Zoom formation sessions because we're on lockdown, but certainly Zoom has provided us with a way to connect and or get into the OneAcademy level 1. I have only done levels 1 and 2, but it is a tremendous learning experience and perspectivization process that I continue to benefit immensely from. And finally, if the rate of change, fellow one-lifers, on the outside exceeds the rate of change on the inside, the end is near. This is a quote from the former chairman and CEO of GE, Jack Welch, and we would do well to continue to accelerate the rate of change in terms of our posture, our presence, and our position in terms of understanding and promoting this understanding of the OneAcademy as the heart of this ecosystem. Have a super fabulous day, everyone, and